Serena, I am so excited to welcome you on for our Lunch and Learn this week. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and who you serve.
Yeah. So the Dandy Agency is 10 years old as of last month, which is crazy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Yeah. And when I started the business, I started to do social media marketing, mostly Instagram marketing for wedding pros. And that was kind of my niche and has been for most of the time that I've had the business. But we really just love with working with any female entrepreneurs and creatives in this space. Of course, we'll work with men, but I worked in corporate for a little while, and after working with a lot of men, I was like, when I start my own business, I think I'll work with a lot of women. So we do mostly Instagram marketing still, but now we do social media systems as well, and work on social media strategy. And we have a few like other services that we sprinkle in here and there as needed.
Okay, today we're going to dive deep into Instagram and what's working. But before we do that, I'm just curious, what is a social media system? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I love Airtable. I'm super obsessed with it. And anybody who's familiar with it knows how robust you can go with it. But whenever I tell somebody like a database or an app, it gets super overwhelming. They're like, what? I don't, excuse me. And it really feels not good. So I started to kind of build out what I call more like templates and systems within Airtable to kind of customize based on what our individual clients need. But I call it like our centralized asset hub where we can take all the things that you have that are out here and bring them in and put automations to them and put reminders and do all these things so that it makes it a little easier for you to keep up with your own social media or marketing in general in a centralized place and it speaks to all of your other areas. And it just kind of helps you set and forget a little bit, which is, I know, something that you are like super, super tapped into. And you don't want people to spend loads and loads and loads of time on things that don't necessarily need to take loads and loads of time.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay, Instagram.
Yeah.
I need to add you to my recommended vendors list because people come to me, potential clients and even current clients,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, can you do my social media?" And no, I cannot. I cannot do that. I've got you covered for all the copywriting you need, blog
Yeah.
posts, emails, all that. I cannot do social media.
Yeah.
So I need to add you to my recommended vendors list because that is not something that is my strong suit. And people come to me all the time, what's working right now? I have no idea. I'm like, I can help you make sure you've put in something out there. I guarantee nothing. So I'm really excited to have you on today to just what is working with Instagram because it feels like a lot of spinning our wheels. And yeah, what's working? Give us a quick rundown of like, what are you seeing with clients and how do I phrase this? Um, what do we need to be doing to make things work? I guess
Yeah.
is how I want to phrase that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tricky thing about Instagram is there is always this component where you have to consider quality content and quantity content because the algorithm really likes quantities. They like large quantities. However, we know that is essentially what kind of will lead to burnout for a lot of people is this idea that they are just like constantly on the hamster wheel. But I think what we do as entrepreneurs and just people in general is we tend to overthink what that necessarily means because we can't get to quantity until, or quality, I should say, until we get to quantity because we really need to be able to look at the data points to tell us, oh, these posts seem to perform pretty well, and these posts tend to bomb. And let's figure out where those percentages need to be. Do I need to be posting like this 80% of the time and this 20% of the time? So that's one of the things that I tell people is until you are in a habit of posting at all, it's going to be really hard to tell what exactly could work for you. But what is working for Instagram right now is we're going a little bit back to kind of the beginning where we're getting a little bit more raw, we're getting a little bit more unfiltered. The things that were trending with TikTok and the things that made TikTok so popular are starting to filter into Instagram. So people are responding a little bit more to that like raw, authentic, less curated kind of posting. And that can still be reels, that can be, grid posts, those can be stories, but it's kind of like each one works differently for everyone. So for your reels, something that's working for people if growth is important to you is actually trial reels. And a lot of people don't know where those are or that those exist or how to post those. And essentially a trial reel is just a reel that is delivered up to people who are not already following you. Because reels were originally created to reach this kind of broader audience, but they still were delivered to your existing followers. Now trial reels are delivered to people that the algorithm thinks is going to like your content, but they're not shown to anyone else. So this is a really good way to grow your audience and to find out what's resonating with strangers. Essentially, it is a delivery system, kind of like an ad where you're like, ooh, here's a cold audience, let's see if they like my stuff. So trial reels are really powerful, and a lot of people just don't do them because it feels like an invisible work because nobody sees it except for you, unless you choose to then show it on your grid. So you do have an option after it goes out live, after a couple days to decide if you want to put it on your grid. So trial reels are great. Content that is a series. So taking a more robust content and just taking those like small little, like tidbits out of it. Like if you were to record a 5-minute video or a 5-minute transcript of some kind and chunking that into 5 different posts, that works really well because it gets people to come back. But you always have to say, stay tuned till my episode tomorrow, or stay tuned to my post tomorrow, or check for part 2, like the part 1, part 2, part 3 kind of post. People love that, or even just a 1-2 part. Because then they're more likely to follow you, engage with that. So that's really important now. And then stories are actually starting to be delivered up to strangers as well. And once upon a time, stories were a way that you would not grow your audience. They were just to kind of talk to your existing people and for them to get to know you and really start to connect with you better. But now I'm seeing more and more in the analytics that as people are posting stories, strangers are seeing those stories, or it's a little easier to go back and like reverse tag people so that they can go share those. So I'm seeing that that's really like pumping people's numbers up a lot. And then collab posts. Collab posts are really a great way to reach a bunch of new people.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you mentioned that those were all really great ways to see growth with your Instagram. What are some other goals that someone might have for Instagram?
Yeah. So you may just want visibility. Visibility is so important because growth is very hard on Instagram now, especially depending on the type of business that you offer and the type of like products or services, because sometimes you're just going to have an attrition rate where people aren't going to come back to you again. Like they're, especially this happens a lot, for the wedding pros that I serve, people get married once, hopefully, and then they're done and they move on. So the growth can be really hard. So you're really looking, can I have just general visibility? And can I also build my community or, connect with my existing followers more and, kind of have my people to create my people. So those are 2 other things that you have to highly consider. And depending on where you want to fall in that mix actually could depend on the type of content that you want to post, because you might not need to post as much as you think.
Yeah, so what would be some things that are working right now if your goal is just visibility?
Yeah, if your goal is just visibility, again, like posting frequency is super important, but like really showing up on the grid and stories pretty consistently is going to be important. One of the things that helps with visibility also is like creating shareable content. So things that people want to put on their stories or they want to repost or they want other people to engage with. So, if you're like a graphics person and you love to post graphics, like instead of posting just one single graphic, create the same graphic in 3 different colorways so that people are more likely to want to share it because they're like, oh, that color kind of goes with something I like. Silly thing, because it's like, well, it's just color, but like I won't share stuff if it doesn't match my colors, my brand colors. Or I'll share it in one place and not, another. So you kind of have to think like, what are those things that are shareable? What's super relatable? Like, and for visibility, relatable content, like stuff that's kind of fun and entertaining, that's going to be something that resonates with everybody, but it really helps you to get those extra eyeballs and helps people who are already kind of connected with you you keep showing up for them because they're already engaging with your content. The more somebody engages with your content right now is more likely that it's going to show up tomorrow and the day after and the day after that.
And so how does that change if your goal is visibility or not visibility, sorry, connection and
Yeah, if your goal is
billing?
if your goal is connection, like this is what's really interesting, because it seems kind of common sense, but if your goal is connection, you have to get social on social. It's so much less at that point about you posting and so much more about who you're going engaging with and what conversations you're having in DMs. Because the more active your DMs are, the actual like better the algorithm responds to any of your content. It's this weird kind of like behind the scenes, very hidden, like, oh, if my DMs are always like popping on and they can tell that I'm always like on the app, then they're going to deliver my content more often. So really finding a way to like have those conversations, and not that like we're not talking the cold DMs or the like, hey, did it? We're having like genuine conversations. Like don't be totally random. Like somebody's stories a few times and then actually start commenting on their stories, but don't make it about you. Make it truly about them. And always putting yourself in the shoes of like, how can I be of service to you, and responding and engaging with that in mind.
Amazing. Okay, so we know some things that work currently here in 2025 for our different goals, but how do we decide what our goals should be or what they are?
Yeah. So, you really have to kind of look at your business and your service suite and kind of decide. You have to look full picture before you can decide like how social media plays into things. You really have to know like, where are my leads coming from right now? Or, do I have the ability to do, like, am I a killer salesperson, but I'm just like lacking in the marketing department? Or, am I lacking in the connection department? Like, you really have to look at everything, look at those numbers and say, okay, how do I want Instagram to serve me? And how do I want to serve my audience? Like these are the two things. And can we make those things talk to each other? Because I think for a lot of people, they assume you're going to use Instagram just for leads. And that doesn't always work. I know my business, like all the people that I need to work with are generally not actually super active on Instagram. Hence why I have a job and a career, is because they're not using Instagram to its full potential. So then you start to realize, okay, like, are my people actually on Instagram? And if they're not on Instagram, does Instagram need to be just something that I like feed all of my other content into to keep the lights on? Am I trying to just like really make sure that I'm continually to build my network on Instagram and just like use it for fun? Or do I want to be more strategic about it? So the only way to really kind of know that goal is to know your business goal. And then that can help you kind of hone in on, do I want to make this a visibility? Do I want to make it credibility? Thought leadership is a great thing for Instagram. You could really just sit there and like give them your hot takes all the time. This is the place that I give everybody my hot takes. If you want this more raw and unfiltered, part of me, then go and find it on Instagram. So it's really meant to augment all of your other efforts, but usually not be the only thing that you do.
When you're working with clients, is there a difference? You've mentioned frequency a few times. Is there a difference in how much you're posting based on what the goal is, or is there just a general frequency that you tend to work with, period?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always tricky because, again, like I said, you really have to get a certain volume of posts going before you can figure out what's working. And then you can decide, like, wow, these really work. So I'm just going to stick to this. But if you're like an Instagram creator, they're going to tell you post multiple times a day, all the time. Like that hasn't actually really changed much. But posting a minimum of 3 times a week is really the only way to like keep the algorithm happy. I know people will say, oh, I only post once a month and it's fine. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. If again, you don't really care what Instagram does for you, but if you want it to move some kind of needle for you, you have to be posting at least 3 times a week. Our clients, we usually try and post 6 times a week. But that's again, a combination of, are we doing reels? Are we doing stories? Are we doing grid posts? Because somebody might hear 6 times and be like, no way. But if you show up on stories 3 times a week in between your grid posts, like, hey, you just did 6 and you didn't even really think about it. So really kind of thinking again, are you trying to serve your existing audience? And if you are, like, really show up on stories a lot. But if you're trying to grow your audience, like show up on reels and do trials, but still make sure that your grid has some posts to keep people more likely to come back and like dive deeper with you.
Okay, so with clients, you're working towards 6 a week,
Yeah.
some sort of combination of the different, I don't know, what do you call those
Posting types.
capacities? Yeah, posting types. I don't different capacities. Um, and then the combination of which ones you're using depend on the goals.
Correct.
Okay. What So for someone who's like, that sounds great. I'm a solopreneur. I don't have the resources to outsource. What do I do? Where is a good frequency that makes showing up on Instagram worth it, right? Because if you're showing up once a week, like is it actually worth your time? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But what what kind of frequency makes pouring into Instagram worth it versus, well, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. So, this kind of depends on what other kind of marketing you're doing, because there's nothing that tells us that we can't take a blog post and take that blog post and turn it into 4 grid posts and 4 reels, or a long form video. And again, just slice it up and turn that into a bunch of other content. Like there's nothing that says Instagram content has to be unique to Instagram only. Especially if you've only got the capacity to write a blog post, like let's just make that blog post also an Instagram post. And then, maybe a week from now, you can go and do a quick little like video snippet from the blog post to reiterate that. And ta-da, like you've got it done. So it's like, I think that's something that we often forget. And a lot of our clients do nothing except for Instagram on the marketing department. Like they just don't. So we are creating content from scratch every single time. So I often am like, let's take these 8 Instagram posts that we did and turn those into a blog post. So it's short form to long form instead of long form to short form. But I highly recommend, like, let's take the long form and do that. And do 1 reel a week and do 1 grid post. But if you don't feel tech savvy enough to do a reel, then that's fine. Don't. But we overcomplicate reels as well. Like the text overlaid reels with a little bit of like your face, ideally, as like your B-roll with some text overlay, they can be super, super impactful because they can be that connection piece. Like the stuff like my betrayals list, or, unfortunately I do loves, like those trends work for everybody all the time because they get to know you, they start the conversations, they're fun. And they're really easy, and they shouldn't take you, a ton of time. So I would definitely say 1 reel, 1 Instagram post, and ideally it's just an extension of some other piece of marketing that you've already done.
Do your reels have to be a trend?
No, they don't. It's really funny because now, like, once upon a time, I'd say don't ever post a reel without some kind of trending audio. And now it doesn't really matter as much. Like trending audio is great. It does help with, added visibility, but a lot of times like just your own audio, just your own voice is going to be totally fine. It's better than nothing, you
Mhm.
know? But it doesn't have to be a trend. You can start your own trends, or you can just say, hey, like evergreen content is fine on Instagram. There's nothing that says you can't do that. Is it fun to hop on a trend here and there? Yeah, absolutely. But if it feels overwhelming, like just skip them and just show up.
What do you find tend to be the easiest and most impactful reels to make? So I know that's something I hear frequently is like reels are so time consuming to make. So how do we make them less time consuming, but again, still be impactful enough that it's worth the time that we're spending brainstorming and creating and publishing?
Yeah. So if you really struggle with reels, like just think about your FAQs. Like this is the easiest kind of reel you can create. Like if you have like a ton of FAQs, just create like a little snippet of you talking for each of those FAQs. Like here's a question I get a lot, and here's the answer. And even if you put just on the text, like question, and then just go through and answer it. That's a really great way to do it. And you could do that a couple times a month, because there is just no way that we don't have at least, like 5 or 6 common questions, and then you can find a way to take those after you kind of publish them over the course of 6 weeks and go back and refine those answers, or figure out what other questions have come from that. Or, something that's working really well right now also that I didn't talk about, but is really kind of interesting, is instead of talking about all the things you can like do for your clients, because people are kind of tired of that, talking about why you do things the way that you do within your business. Like, we don't do this because, or we like to approach it this way because, or this is the type of client we like to work with. Not a because, it's just the type of client, and it's these like little pieces about the philosophy of your business, or what's important to you ethically, or any of those things. And again, you can keep it super quick and simple and do that, and you're going to have a good impact without having to do like crazy editing. Literally just your face, and you can do some text overlay. And if you really are uncomfortable with your face, have like a slideshow of images or b-roll or something like that, and do a voiceover instead. Those actually do take more work than the video, because you have to extract the audio, or you have to record it as you're like doing it, and you're like, oh, this is what. So keep it short. We have 3 minutes now, but you don't have to do that. You can, 15 seconds or so is fantastic.
Okay, that's a great question actually, is like what is typically what kind of length are you aiming for with reels?
Yeah. So what used to be the common, like advice would be 6 seconds or less. It's really hard to connect with people in 6 seconds. Like, you've got 6 seconds or less for sure to like hook them. But with this rise of AI and AI videos, like, there are actually a couple triggers for people now, that if it's like 6 seconds or less, now are we like, ooh, is this AI generated? Especially on the video side, maybe not so much on the photo side. Um, so, 15 to 30 seconds for anything that's talking, unless you're doing like, let's just say you're in fitness or wellness, or, like food, and you're trying to like demo a recipe or like a move or something like that. You have a little bit more time, but instead of just like doing it, you're going to use a hook at the beginning that tells people like why the heck they want to be watching, or suspense, watch till the end because, kind of thing. So you can keep people's attention for longer if you give them, really good content in the middle. But if you're going for 15 or 30 seconds, which is usually what I say is the best to just start with, after you get in the habit of that, go check your analytics, because now Instagram tells you when people drop off. They'll tell you not only like when they drop off, but total watch time for your content. And if you get in the habit of that, you can start to see, oh, it looks like the attention span of my people is this. And then you need to back yourself up into that.
Okay, so speaking of analytics, what other analytics should we be looking at in
Yeah. So
Instagram?
saves and shares are so much like more impactful now than likes. I mean, all of it matters, but when content is saved and shared, it tells Instagram people are having conversations around the content, or it's resonating with them. Therefore, the algorithm is more likely to continue to deliver that content to those people and people like them. So, they want it to be social again. So if we're saving it, that means we may go back to it and we're going to watch it again, or we're going to take action on what it is. Versus if we shared it, that means we're having conversations with our friends, which means the DMs are busy, which means that we're going to start like being like, oh, I saved this and I shared this, and now I'm going to share something. And then it indicates to them that conversations are happening. So those two metrics now are really important. Yeah.
That's so funny. I've noticed, and I didn't connect the dots, but I've noticed that I have a coworker that I share raccoon videos with, and as soon as I started sharing those in our DMs, where I started getting way more raccoon videos. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, there you go.
Well,
Okay.
and people are kind of a little bit more private now sometimes, and they're just maybe not as likely to comment like they used to be. They would almost rather take it offline, quote unquote, take it offline and have this private conversation instead of have a public conversation. It's not the case for everybody, but a lot of times we're seeing these comment threads, and all it is the one word answers, because someone's using mini chat to like prompt them through some kind of automation. So the comments like aren't actually substantial. You know what I'm trying to say,
I know
but
what you're saying.
the word will not come out of my mouth.
You know, that's so I've noticed that on TikTok especially, where like the comments are all jokes, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, and like but it's not actual conversations happening. It's just like these like little like sentence like snippets where it's just someone cracking a joke.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. What are you seeing that we're doing wrong on Instagram? I guess I'll say
Mm.
this.
Um, Single images or single graphics. So we don't
Okay.
like those anymore. Um, Square. So let's not do that anymore either. Everything should be portrait, like as large as you can make it is what you want it to make it. So that 3x4 orientation instead of the square now. You want things that people can swipe through. So, that's why we say
Okay.
we don't want the single image anymore, because then people are like, well, what's next? And it's like it's a reflex now that we start to swipe and then we realize if there's nothing there, like we've just swiped into our DMs or we've swiped to something else and then we're gone, like we've lost, we've become lost. Um, because that's just what happens. So, and also like, I mean, this happens way more for a lot of my clients in the wedding space where they've worked with multiple people for a particular event, and we share that event. If we're not utilizing either the collaborations or we're not tagging everybody or we're missing the location, like all of those little things, they can add up. So if it is something where you can tag other people, we're not saying spamming, we mean legitimate people that you worked with, we want to do
Right.
that. And then something that's also missing now that people like they're kind of hearing it, but they're not realizing that they should do it is alt text. Not just for accessibility, but for keywords, and also making sure captions are
Mhm.
relatively relevant to what you're posting and have keywords in them. Because now you may have noticed hashtags still matter, but not for growth. Like they still help Instagram kind of categorize you. But if you go into the search or you go into the comments, now Instagram is making recommendations like, do you want to see more content like this? And it's full out in a sentence, it's like more, do you want to see more, greenery weddings, or do you want to see more people who work in Instagram coaching or whatever? Like this is now popping up based contextually on what's happening in the image and the caption and the alt text. They all play together. So like kind
Okay.
of underutilizing the features that are available is kind of where you go quote unquote wrong. Um,
So so Instagram is becoming more SEO friendly then.
Correct. Yes. And
Okay.
then like you really want to make sure your bio is like as potent as it can be for SEO and for what you do and who you want to reach. And the links that you have available, you can do 5 links now from Instagram. Instead of having to use a link tree or something, you can actually just put those links with Instagram now. So that's something that I see wrong. And then not having your contact information is just
Mm.
so I see it all the time, but like you can put your contact information if you have Calendly or Acuity or any like scheduling link, those can be integrated into Instagram now. So just kind of like this underutilization of the tools means that
Mm.
it's making it more challenging for people to work with you from Instagram. So that's where you're losing them.
Okay. I had no idea you could integrate that. That's good to know. Wow, lots of things that I need to go do for my own account. Um, okay, so we've talked about what's working. We've talked about what you often see people doing wrong. Do you have any predictions for the future of what we will continue to see more of, or what we may stop seeing, or just anything like that?
I mean, we're going to see more and more AI content, which, I have lots of thoughts about AI. And I think that that could be, we could see a rebellion against AI, but it's going to, right now, it's kind of like tricky with the algorithm is because sometimes they're delivering AI content and we don't want to see that. So it's like
Mhm.
there's going to be a point in time where people are going to have to make a decision if they're going to accept this and they're going to have to provide that feedback. So I think we're going to get into a little bit of a tricky territory there of people not necessarily knowing if what they're sharing is real or if what they're consuming is real. It's something that like we talk about in our household all the time. My husband's like, I got tricked the other day, and he
Mhm.
does video for a living, and he's like, I got tricked by an AI video, and he's like, and I cannot even believe it happened. So it's like really like that's going to lead to additional trust issues. So like the more often again that you show up as yourself and obviously as yourself, like the more people are going to trust you versus somebody else. So I think we're already kind of in that. I think people are calling it the trust recession. I think we're already there a little
Yeah.
bit. And I think we're going to kind of continue to see that. So if we're unwilling to show up and, be who we are consistently, it's going to just kind of like create more tension in that social space. And it's going to be harder for us to make traction with that. video has been like the thing that everybody needs to lean into for, 10 years or whatever. But I also think that like we're so oversaturated with video that like we're kind of going back to this idea of like we need all of it. So when you do a carousel, do a graphic, do a video, do a, still image, give a little bit of everything for people. Cause again, not everybody wants to consume things the same way.
Yeah.
And I do predict we're going to see another app pop up somewhere, in the next couple of years. What that app looks like, how people use it, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely expect that. I'm not
I feel
really
like,
predict. Go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I feel like that's one thing you can almost guarantee with social media is that something's gonna change and you don't
Yeah.
know what it's gonna be, but you have
Yeah.
to expect that things are going to change.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, Instagram is one of those things, it's like love it or hate it, like it does have longevity. So, it will continue to evolve and change based on user behaviors because they're not doing anything to change Instagram that isn't already dictated by data. Like they're not just, I mean, honestly, they're not throwing spaghetti at the wall and doing stuff. So people are like, oh, I hate this. And I'm like, well, somebody indicated that that's what they want, therefore they followed that. And so it's one of those things that if we can always just kind of be tuned into our data, we can always know what the next thing is. It's just like doing the research to figure out what's the next service or package. Like the data exists somewhere and that's all they're doing. They're not doing it just to make anybody angry.
Well, and that's some people's critique of Instagram is, oh, they only steal ideas from other people, but no, they're just waiting to let other people figure out what works and then they're implementing it themselves.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's like I think there's a book, Red Tide, Blue Tide, or something like that, or like that talks about basically there's no new original ideas. So you're like reinvigorating your version of somebody else's idea. And that's essentially what they're doing. That's what everybody's doing. So it's tricky sometimes to know. Whether or not it's worth it. It's the same kind of thing that happened with TikTok. I was like, I mean, I predict that somebody's going to buy it and it's not going to be who we expect. And I think that's still, going to be the case for TikTok. But it's not going anywhere as much as we thought that it would. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for our friends that are ready to offload their social media, how can they work with you?
yeah. So all you have to do is send me a message on Instagram at Dandy Agency. It's like short for Dandelion, DANDE agency. So I'm on Instagram and that's my website too. But usually I just kind of start with a free conversation with everyone to figure out if it makes sense. Cause I think sometimes we think we need help and then we realize, oh, we just need a plan. And then if I can just implement the plan myself, then I don't necessarily need to offload it. Or some people are like, no, I hate this with so much vitriol in my body, but I know it's necessary. Like, get it off my plate. We work with people like on every side of the spectrum. But it always just starts with a simple conversation like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, what's the goal? And then kind of backing up the plan into there. Because sure, we have like our standard of what we think is going to work for everyone, but sometimes we get in it and realize people's capacities are just different and we have to work with what we can, look at the data, and then like continue to evolve that plan, because that's another thing we all have to keep in mind. Like it's not one size fits all forever. Like even if something's working, eventually we're going to have to make something else happen in the process as people change and evolve. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then for our friends who would I love to offload but just don't have the resources or the ability to do that yet,
yeah.
how can they work with you to make Instagram easier for themselves?
Yeah, so there's two different things. Like the super easy is I have something called Swell Social Light, which is basically just trending audio that I deliver every week to your inbox. It's usually 5 to 7 pieces of audio that you can pair with like pictures or videos or anything. And I kind of say like, here's how often it's been used. Here's where we're at in that trending cycle. If it's early trending, if it's late trending, if it's something everyone's like Taylor Swift, everybody's using Taylor Swift. So, I try and avoid the stuff that everyone's using. But we catch those kind of like trends and give you those ideas, and then you can do what you want to with them. But those are delivered every single week. It's only $8 a month. So super easy, quick way to kind of get a little bit of that resource. And then we have, Swell strategy sessions, which are just to, again, help kind of keep you on the right track. We sit down, we have a conversation, we figure out what you need to do, what the goal is, and help get a plan on paper for you so that you can execute it on your own.
Amazing. If you were to give everyone one action step to take after listening to this, what would it be?
Ooh, I'm actually going to give it as two, because I feel like that's super important. One, check your analytics because we spend so much time really like thinking, oh, I think this worked, or I'm not sure if this worked. And we don't always just look at the insights that Instagram delivers to us. And you can look at individual insights on your grid, like just tap on the post and it'll say view insights, or you can look at the bigger picture, and when you're looking at it, don't just look at it for this week. Look at a 30-day view, a 60-day, a 90-day. Really start to kind of get a sense because different seasons will impact your numbers in different ways. And sometimes like it's going to look really bad for 2 weeks, but then the previous 2 weeks were really nice. And you can kind of back yourself up into that. And then my other one would be again, like just find a piece of your long form content and then just record some like small snippets of that long form as a video. Um, and if you really don't have the capacity to do the video, just figure out how you can turn it into 3 to 5, grid posts or even
Mhm.
stories that you could do. Because again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time if you have some long form content. But if you don't,
Yes,
just record those FAQs.
absolutely. Okay, and then what is one book that you would recommend that everyone reads?
Yeah. So if we're talking business book, Who Not How would be one of my top picks. Last time I listened to it, I immediately went and hired 3 new people. So, it's just one of those things. Like,
Hey,
yeah, it's really really good. And then if you're talking about like a book for fun, All the Colors of the Dark was one that I read a couple months ago that was just excellent. I read a lot, so I got all the book recs.
I love it. Amazing. Serena, thank you so much for being here today and just sharing your genius and helping those of us who just feel so overwhelmed by Instagram become a little less overwhelmed and a little more clear on how we can use it to the best of our ability.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, any questions, feel free to just send them to me via DM. I'm always down to talk about Instagram.
Amazing. And all of your links will be listed in the description and the show notes so that everyone can find you